I'm JohnBerry555 and today I'm continuing my series of MASH retro reviews with Season 5, Episode 6, The Nurses. So this episode originally aired on October 19th in 1976. Before I go any further, I will say that this video and for the next several videos, I will most likely be doing voiceover rather than showing my face. It's just going to be easier for me right now. Eventually my face will return, but for now, I'm making production a little bit easier for me. But anyhow, let's actually talk about this episode. In this episode, actually deals with Margaret's relationship with the nurses that she supervises. And it's a very good episode. In fact, the MASH Wiki notes that this was apparently one of Loretta Swift's favorite episodes, and I can see why. It does really good at developing Margaret as a character and the nurses as well. In fact, these are probably the most individual nurses, the most character-driven nurses that we've seen so far today. Now, none of these nurses we have seen before, and none of them we will see ever again. Even though one of the nurses is a Nurse Baker, but it's not the same Nurse Baker that we've seen before and after this episode, because of course it's not. And actually that's one thing with later episodes of MASH. The nurses start getting more development, and we start getting more notable recurring nurses, such as Nurse Kelly, even though she's not in this episode, which I think she should have been at least mentioned in this episode, but it's focused on 4 new characters, and I think they partially did that so that way they could develop them without doing anything longer term, and I kind of wish they had done more with these characters, because these are all good characters. They have distinct personalities, and it serves though are to develop Margaret as a character, have her starting to not be as strict. And some of that in this episode's review should have been partially because the nurses never included her in their activities. And I would say the nurses are right to be thinking that she would not accept, because she is their supervisor, their superior officer. And there are that kind of relationship where, oftentimes in any kind of chain of command, both military and civilian, that your supervisor is not supposed to be your friend because of conflicts of interest and things like that. There's a reason why that is a very common thing also in real life, but that's also something that often does break down. We see this in a lot of actually television shows where clearly there's those relationships, and even in my own working experience, I have seen cases where supervisors and their employees, subordinates, whatever terms we want to use, do develop friendships and interact outside of the working environment. I don't know what it is exactly in the military nowadays, but I know military sitcoms that have done that before. And importantly, for developing Margaret as a character, we need to understand that who she is and her own wants and desires outside of what we've already seen of her. And that's what this episode does. Now, the main plot of this episode, is, I would say, that character development, that characterization for Margaret, and by extension, these nurses we never see again, but also Nurse Baker, her husband, who, she's only been married a couple months now, arrives at the camp because he got a 24-hour leave and they never had their honeymoon. And that's where the plot of the episode, like the A-plot for lack of a better term. And honestly, I'm not going to go too much into it, but basically the end of the episode is, yes, the nurses, Hawkeye, BJ all go behind Margaret, and by extension, Colonel Parker's back in order so that way Nurse Baker and her husband, Lieutenant Baker, are able to spend the night together. And the crux of it is that at the end, Margaret decides that she knows what happened, because she did figure it out fairly easily, because she confronted the nurses, and that's when she revealed that she was not happy the fact that they never included her in their activities, and they revealed that they never thought that she would have accepted. But going back to the end of the episode, she basically says that it's a private matter between her nurses. She knows what's going on, and it's already handled. Basically, that's throwing them under the bus as well, which earns some newfound respect, newfound camaraderie. And at the end of the episode, when Margaret goes back in the tent to give them their next batch of duties, what the rotation is going to be, they offer her some of the fudge that was making. Because at the start of the episode, they were making fudge, and Lieutenant Baker got mad at Margaret and threw it on their door. Watch the whole episode. I'm not doing it justice. But they included Margaret in that. She got to taste it and join in them making fun of how bad the fudge is. She gets offered a lousy cup of coffee because that's one of the things she complained about. She was never included in just getting offered a lousy cup of coffee. So you can see at the end of the episode, now that the nurses know that she would be happy participating, they're inviting Margaret to participate, which takes her off for a circle. And it's also good for Margaret, I would say emotionally, mentally, improves her morale as well. Now, even in later episodes, she's still, military and all that, but you can see throughout a lot of match, and Margaret becomes, for that better term, more human, more of a realistic, not one-note character, which she kind of was in the beginning. That all really started, at least in terms of the episodes, with her meeting Donna Penobscot and getting engaged in fully distancing herself from Frank, which had already begun to happen under season 4, and that's partially because she had an actual role model in Colonel Potter, a military man she could look up to and respect. Because Colonel Blake was never that, and Frank kind of filled that role, but not really. And also, Potter was a fatherly figure, and that probably reminded her of her father, which in the later episode we do see she really does want to impress her father. And you can kind of see how that a good role model who respects her, who values her as an officer, not just as a nurse. You can see why she's able to start loosening up, that now she has a positive role model in her life and is able to distance herself from Frank. In this episode, yes, there's a little bit of a E-plot, I guess, F-plot, G-plot with Frank. Don't worry about it. Basically, he wants Margaret back, but he wants Margaret to come crawling back. That's never going to happen, by the way. So we can ignore that. But ultimately, this is further showing that Margaret is developing as a character, that she's starting to interact, have fun with the people she's at the camp with. We never got to see these nurses again, but the impact of these nurses on Margaret's character development in the shared events they went through in this episode do carry forward into the future episodes that we will, of course, be talking about as we continue this series of retro reviews. So yes, this is a great episode. I do highly encourage you to watch it. I encourage you to watch all the MASH, but this is definitely one episode where me trying to summarize it does not do the episode justice, because you really gotta explain it, and part of that is not explain. You gotta watch it, and part of that is because of the acting, the facial acting, like, and body language. Like Margaret's actor Loretta Swit, I think, did a really good job at really conveying the emotions very well in how she carried herself in this episode, and you felt real. Like where she was breaking down, how she felt excluded from the nurses' activities. Like you could see that not only did she feel sad, angry, disrespected by not being included, but you can also see her trying to maintain her professionalism in that scene, which is just really well done, and in my opinion, trying to do that, almost show like the real feelings, but also holding them in as an actor. Wow, is a skill that is, in my opinion, very impressive, and you have to watch it to properly enjoy the performance. And with that, I will also address, because I mentioned that ending scene, but in there you can see that with nurses, including Margaret, Loretta Swit portrays Margaret, her performance is like, now that she's being included, she doesn't feel the need to maintain that professionalism, and she's able to properly express Margaret's feelings, actual feelings, her joy of being included. And that, I think, takes a lot of skill. Now, I'm not a professional actor, but I feel like conveying those conflicting emotions is a very impressive skill, and I very much value that in really any performance. But you can let me know your thoughts on this episode in the comment section down below, and I'll see you next week for the episode The Abduction of Margaret Houlihan. So I hope to see you then.